Welcome to the video for Unit 4, Day 3, Adding and Subtracting Polynomials. This video will be the advanced version of the lesson. If you are not at the advanced level, you should exit out and go back to find the proficient or basic. Today's lesson is on an Algebra 1 topic, so basically we're going to go really quickly through a couple details just to make sure that you're not losing points for simple questions, because these will continue to come up in Algebra 2. To start with, I'm going to provide you with a non-example. So please make sure that you really clearly write this in your notes that this is a non-example. And this is a non-example because there is a very common mistake that is made in this work. Please pause the video for a second and look at what you've written, this first example, and in sentence form, identify the mistake and the correct answer. When you press play again, I'll talk to you about what I would have said. Okay, so by now you've probably realized that the mistake comes right at the first step when this person is distributing. The correct way to distribute is to take the coefficient in front of the second polynomial and to multiply it by all three. This person only multiplied it for the first term. So instead of bringing the 3x down, they should have multiplied -2 to get -6x right here, and multiplied -2 times -2 to get +4 at that stage. Which means if you go back to combine like terms, those two still equal -4x squared, but the middle term is 3 minus 6x, which would be minus 3x instead. And the last term is -1 plus 4, which would be plus 3. It seems silly, and you're probably like rolling your eyes at this point, but I guarantee to you that if you are going too fast, this is the mistake that you'll make, and it's worth paying attention to. Quick little review before we move on to something more interesting. Here are 4 problems. Please turn to the back of this page where there is blank space provided for practice problems, and simplify these 4 expressions, paying attention to that common mistake that we just discussed. Pause the video as you work these out. When you press play again, I'll show you the answers. Here are the answers to the first 4 practice problems. Number 1 and actually number 3 here. And here are 2 and 4. If you need another minute to look at the work to check yours, you can pause the video. Otherwise, we'll move on to the second example. So this whole process of distributing and combining, we can do this when we have multiple variables as well. And here's an example of multiple variables. In this case, we're talking about x's and y's. And the important thing to know is that when you have multiple variables, like terms have to have both the same variables, and each variable has to have the same exponent. So if I start this problem, normal process, I would distribute the 2 first. Of course, distribution is multiplying, so it affects the coefficient but not the exponents. The first polynomial comes straight down because there's no coefficient out front. And the second polynomial becomes 2x squared y minus 10x cubed y. And now I look for those like terms that we discussed. The first term has an x squared and a y squared. The second term also has x and y, but it's not x squared and y squared specifically, so it's not a like term. And in fact, if I look at all of the others, none of these other terms have both an x squared and a y squared, which means there are no like terms to combine with x squared, y squared, and that just comes straight down. The second term has x cubed and y, and there is actually a like term to go with this one, which is this last term right here. So those two can combine, and you combine them normally by adding 2 and -10, and you get -8 x cubed y. These last 2 terms, if you check, you will quickly realize are not like terms, and so they come down and can't be combined. This is your final simplified form of this polynomial. Please do take a moment to write down these reminders, and then we'll continue with just 2 quick practice problems, numbers 5 and 6. Pause the video as you work these out. And when you press play, I'll show you the answers. Here are the answers to numbers 5 and 6. Number 5 looks like this. and number 6. If you need more time looking at these answers, press pause. Otherwise, we'll continue with the third and final example. So this whole topic of multiple variables is probably going to ring some bells in your head because you've definitely seen a bunch of problems like this before. And what I want to draw your attention to is that actually this is a completely different type of simplifying than what we did above, primarily because there is no addition or subtraction. This is straight up exponent rules. There are 2 different ways to go about this, and I want to make sure that you know both because they will be important to applying this when we get to logarithms and exponential equations. The most easily understood method would be to think about what this 3 outside means. Basically, we have a term right here. It's got a coefficient and some variables. And we have another term that's being multiplied 3 times, and that's what that outside exponent means. So that means I'm really taking 4xy squared times 2x cubed y to the 5th times 2x cubed y to the 5th again times 2x cubed y to the 5th again. And now multiplying terms means we just multiply all of the numbers. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 2 is 16. 16 times 2 is 32. And then we take each variable and we add its exponents because that's how you multiply variables. So this is x to the 1st times x cubed would be x to the 4th. And then this exponent 3 adds to become x to the 7th, and this one adds to be x to the 10th. And then we do the same thing for the y's, and we do 2 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5, which ends up being 17, and that's your final answer. Now you may be thinking to yourself, that seems like a lot of work, and yeah, you're right. So there is another way to do this more quickly, which would be just to take this exponent and to distribute it. When you distribute, make sure that you remember it's an exponent, not a coefficient. So when you distribute to the 2, which is a coefficient, this becomes 2 cubed. And so you have 4xy squared as your first term, and your second term becomes 2 cubed, and then x to the 9th. You multiply those because they're both exponents, and y to the 15th. Now, 2 cubed is 8, and so 8 times 4 is 32, and x times x to the 9th is x to the 10th, and y squared times y to the 15th is y to the 17th, and you can see easily that we get the exact same answer. You are welcome to use either method, but you must be clear on whichever method you use. Here are your reminders, and then I'll give you some practice problems. Your last 4 practice problems for today are the following. Pause the video here as you work them out, and when you press play, I'll show you the answers. Here are the answers. Numbers 7 and 9, and 8 and 10.